thrilled to be here to hold space with you all and to learn, expand our hearts, our minds, and to thank all of you viewers for joining us as well this afternoon. I feel your presence and spirit. Before I introduce our guest of honor, though, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items to ensure you enjoy the time together today. First, we are recording today's conversation and we'll make the recording available so you can share this with your friends. Second, we ask that you use the Q&A feature to maybe lift up questions around the Women X of Color, Women X of Power program. We will have a packed program, so we're not sure that we'll get to any of your questions, but there will be additional opportunities to engage with us at the San Francisco Foundation about our Women X of Color, Women X of Power program. In fact, you will hear from another founding member of that program at the conclusion of the conversation today. Lastly, if you experience any technical issues, please email woc@sff.org. and a member of our team will troubleshoot with you. Now, let's get into it. Please welcome Principal of Black Futures Lab, co-founder of the Black Lives Matter hashtag and movement, political strategist, organizer, and author of The Purpose of Power, How We Come Together When We Fall Apart, the brilliant and powerful Alicia Garza. Hello.
Hi, that was such a kind and wonderful introduction. It's great to be here with all of you this afternoon or evening, depending on where you are.
Thank you. It is such an honor to speak with you today and to talk to you about who you are, what drives your work, and the ways that you inspire others. So welcome back to the Bay, even if it's just virtually. We're so happy to have you with us. It's
so good to be here. And I'm, of course, repping the Bay today.
Love it.
Yeah, you know, always.
I gotta get one of those.
Yes.
As I mentioned, you released a book titled The Purpose of Power, How We Come Together When We Fall Apart. You did this on the heels of social unrest and during the height of the pandemic in summer of 2020. I've read the book, and that's kind of pushing it because you read it to me through Audible. Right on. So I consider you a close friend. We spent some time together. But I know that book was really aimed at people like me and people like that are on this webinar and experiencing you today, because we're really thirsty to find solutions and to hear from people who have made change. And so we're really hoping to hear more about your leadership, and I love that. So let's dive right in.
Okay.
So in your own words, tell us about The Purpose of Power. Why did you write it?
You know, the book actually took about 3 years to write. And there was a lot of things that happened from the moment that I agreed to write the book to when it actually kind of went out into the world. I started out wanting to write this book because it really was the book that I wanted when I first started organizing. There really were no kind of, there was like manuals on how to run campaigns or like manuals on this or that, but not really any kind of how-to in terms of being a part of or building a movement. And there was all these things that I was experiencing that it was hard for me to make sense of. You know, I would talk to kind of OGs in my community, right? Their experience was really different. And then the things that I could get my hands on were not first-person accounts, right? They were mostly accounts from academics or people who studied people who organized, but not organizers themselves. And coming off of the heels of the 2016 election, I think once I uncurled myself out of a ball, I really started thinking about what do we need to know to build the kinds of movements that can sustain lasting change. So that's why I decided to write this book. I really wanted to like leave some breadcrumbs in the forest, as my one of my mentors says to me all the time. And I hope that this book is actually useful for people who organize and people who are not organizers. I really wanted this book to be accessible to anybody who's trying to figure out how they can be a part of making change and what their role might be. And I'll just say it was probably destined, but it was unintentional that the book came out in October of 2020. It was supposed to come out way earlier, but of course, life. And then also my mom died in the process of writing the book. And so I didn't even think I was going to finish it, but I knew this was something that she was so proud of, and she would have wanted me to finish. So that's what you hopefully are holding in your hands. And of course, looking back on it now, there's all these things that I would update or, add, but this was like a snapshot. And I hope, excuse me, I hope that other people who are doing this work will also document what we're learning. I see this book really as like a time capsule in a way, where we get to have a snapshot in time of what we were grappling with, thinking about, not sure about, right? And that we kind of create some kind of conversation that is written that can last much farther beyond us.
Thank you for that. I feel like I cannot move on without really appreciating the courage that it took to really get vulnerable in the book. It is very clear that it was a process of healing for you as it relates to the relationship you had with your mom. And it is going to bring me to the next question, where you do write a lot about your mom in the book. And this is a Women of Color, Women of Power kind of program. And I think it's just beautiful, the idea that your mom had influenced you in so many ways. And so I want you to talk a little bit more about her influence on you, and maybe even a bit about the healing process. And I'm saying that because you wrote an afterword, and you did kind of let us in a little bit of that process. And I just feel like it's really courageous. So if you would kind of share more about how that helped you to kind of link to the purpose of the book, but also to help you in your own healing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, well, it was my mom's birthday on Monday. My mom is also a twin, so it was my uncle's birthday, who lives here in Georgia. And so I'm glad that you brought her into the room, because she's certainly always on my heart. My mom really was the first person who taught me how to see the world. And it only made sense that she would be so prominent in this book. When I first wrote, like literally the first paragraphs of this book, I spent probably about 2.5 or 3 hours on the phone with my mom. We didn't often actually talk that long, but for some reason, I was at this little cabin in the woods, right, at this women's writing colony, like up in Washington State. And I was staring at a computer going, I have no idea how to write a book. And I don't even know where to start. So maybe I'll just call my mom and like procrastinate for a little bit. And she was telling me all these stories that I never heard before about her relationship with my biological dad, and the struggles that she had to endure as a woman who, she thought she was in a long-lasting relationship that fell apart when she got pregnant with me. And she quickly had to kind of figure out how to move forward, and also how to raise a child on her own that she didn't plan to do that with. And it made her think and talk to me a lot more about what it meant to not just be a woman, but to be a Black woman in this world. The struggles that she endured trying to make enough money to keep a roof over our heads, the struggles that she endured trying to get me into the right classes and schools, and keeping our public schools from like pushing me in a corner. Basically, she had a lot of stories about navigating the court systems and trying to get child support for me. And I think the reason that she is so prominent here is I realized that my mom taught me almost everything about what I value, and how I want to show up for what I value. And I think for all of us, there's someone in our lives who gives us our very first opportunity to see the world as it is, and to help us navigate it and help guide us through it. I learned from my mother about racism and patriarchy. I learned from my mom about the economy. I learned from my mom about global social justice movements. And my mom was not an activist. She was not an organizer. We had really different political perspectives on things. And I became aware of that as I got older. But ultimately, what I think is useful in her story is for each of us to kind of examine how did we first get to make sense of the world, and how did those ideas, right, shape what we think is possible for us or not possible for us, and how does that worldview shape the work that we now do, right, and what might be our particular contribution or role. So I'm glad that you named, right, that book writing is an incredibly vulnerable process. I highly recommend it, and also completely understand if you never want to do it, because it's a lot. And I don't know why people don't talk about how much emotional capacity is required. But I'm really grateful that she was able to be a part of that conversation.
Well, I definitely feel that came through in the book, and that your relationship was just one of the pillars that has helped you to navigate through so many power constructs.
Mm.
Now, you talk about power a lot in the book as well. And so I want you to talk about, in the book, you say, controlling the story of who we are and what makes us who we are is an exercise of power. How can we learn to control the narrative, both on a personal and national level?
So I'm hoping I can. Has anybody seen Queen and Slim?
Oh, yes.
Okay. I just watched it again for the second time a couple of weeks ago. It's a brilliant, brilliant film. And one of the things that I thought was so powerful about it is that you see through the intertwined story of these two people, how they changed the narrative about themselves and each other through their interactions and their relationship, not just with each other, right? But the kind of process that they are going through in order to get free. And they're trying to get free from a lot of things. They're trying to get free from the state, but they're also trying to get free from these narratives, right, about Black people, Black communities, and our value and our worth. And I put that in the book because I don't know that I feel that we pay enough attention to the power of story. Oftentimes when we are talking about story, we're using them as like vignettes, right? Or, ways to like prove a point, as opposed to thinking about story and narrative as a way to help us make sense of ourselves and each other and who we can be together. There is a very powerful story that's operating in this country right now. It's called Make America Great Again. And that narrative and that story says a lot in just that little phrase, right? That actually Donald Trump did not come up with. That is a Ronald Reagan phrase from the year that I was born, where they are not even dog whistling, right? To people who believe that the best version of America is one that is run by white men who are Christian and heterosexual and able-bodied, right? And that the greatest threats to that project, right, are all of us, right? And I think when we're looking at organizing and power building, I fear a lot of the time that we are not telling the right story about who we can be together. We make some honest but tragic mistakes in our storytelling. Here's a story that is deeply tragic. It is the story that says that immigrants do the work that nobody else wants to do. Okay. That is a story that basically says there's some people who want to work and there's some people who don't. And we have to like resist the temptation, right? To not just like unintentionally exclude or reproduce narratives about each other, but also I think there's something deeply troubling for me about the story that like we are here to save a project that was never built for us. Now, with that being said, I deeply believe in the promise of America, right? But we've never actually experienced it. So I'm not going to be a martyr, right? For the current way that things are operating. I want to be a warrior, right? For the making the promise a reality. And the way to do that and to talk about that is to talk about what each of our roles can be in it, and to talk about the ways that people like us, right, every single day against incredible odds, right, still fight to make the promise real because it has not been actualized yet. That is a very different story, right? Than some of us work harder than others. And so therefore we deserve, it's like, no, we don't have to do all that. I think I also wanted to make the point here that narrative is a battlefield on which we have to contest. I spend a lot of time watching news, right? Cable news, MSNBC, CNN. I feel like I just go back and forth between them. And I'm constantly thinking about how we talk to each other and how we talk to people who are looking for us. And so often, right, I think we pay more attention to the facts and the figures than we do the experience and that heart muscle, right? When I tell you a story about my mother, you start thinking about your mom, and you start thinking about family, and you start thinking about the people that you love and you care for and wanting to protect them, right? If I started to tell you that, Black women make, 68 cents to every dollar that white men make, you're like, okay, you've already gone somewhere else, right? So I think, just paying attention in our campaigns, in our strategies, in our work to how we tell stories, the importance of storytelling, and the outcome that we want, right? I think we want to see ourselves, and we deserve to see ourselves, not as mules, right? But as protagonists, and they're different things. We are already doing the lion's share of the hero's work that is necessary to make sure that nobody gets left out and nobody gets left behind. And we should celebrate ourselves for that, while also helping us chart for each other what are the next steps, right? And how can we support each other along that journey? So that's some of it.
Alicia, thank you. You just laid out a lot of things for us to consider, and I'm really glad that we're here having this conversation. And I'm super excited to announce that we've invited some community partners who interact with our Women X of Color, Women X of Power programs, and they are going to ask you directly questions. And to me, this is very special because I know of your connection to community and dedication to the local work that's happening. And so we have a few folks who are going to join us right now to ask you some questions themselves. So without further ado, let's invite Catherine Cantone. And while they're getting her, I will actually, there we go. I will introduce you a little bit, Catherine. Thank you. Catherine is based in occupied Nishnah Maidu Miwok land, Sacramento, California, and was raised on Yelamu occupied Ramaytush Ohlone land, San Francisco, and Wuchin occupied Lishan Ohlone land, Oakland. Mm-hmm. They are detribalized Guatemalan, a budding weaver, a cultural organizer, a caregiver, and a facilitator of magic. Recently, They ended their role as the inaugural Race and Equity Manager at the California Arts Council. Starting this week, they are the Learning Communities Director for Leader Spring Center. Help me welcome Catherine.
Yes. Hi, Catherine. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. It's such an honor. And I'm just, yeah, I feel all the heart resonance, all the heart muscles right now. So thank you so much for your work. And yes, and I also want to take this moment to thank the Lead Strong community, the Leader Spring community, because they actually brought this question for you. And our question is, what would you say to leaders in the social sector who do not see themselves as activists, but who have chosen still to work hard to make a difference in the lives of low-income communities of color?
I would say thank you. It is okay if you don't identify as an activist. I'm not sure what happened in the last 10 years. We've missed some stuff. And so I just want to say, being an organizer is an incredible job with a lot of responsibility, but it's not better than any other role in a movement. And it's not about what role you play, it's that you play a role. I'm always saying to people, no matter what it is that you choose to do, what are you going to tell your kids and your grandkids or your friends' kids and grandkids who might ask you, hey, what were you doing, right, at the moment where this country erupted around racial violence and injustice? What were you doing? Did you play a role in that? I want you to be able to say that you did something and say what you did. And if it was teaching kids about their history, that is huge. That is huge. And if you don't think that that's activism, that's fine. In this political moment, doing the work that we do to support people who are not only being left out and left behind, but are being targeted, and supporting people to live full and dignified lives in this moment is activism. So, don't feel like because you're not doing a piece of work that is in your mind. Let me say this differently. Please know that your contribution is so valuable and that we need so many people to play different roles, whether it be serving our communities, whether it be witnessing our communities, listening to and holding our communities, helping our communities tell our own stories, right? All of that is deeply, deeply valuable. So I hope that we can at one point end the narrative, right? That if you're not an organizer, you're not doing the real work. That is such bullshit. And I just hope, right, that we can start to actually chart a path and say, what are all of the roles that help make movements function, right? And there are hundreds, if not thousands. So thank you for that question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Next, I invite Brandy Bowen. Brandy is a lead organizer at Coleman Advocates.
Hey,
Brandy has been connected to Coleman Advocates since 2015, when she
hey.
developed a youth organizing program called Children Making a Change for Coleman's youngest members to grow as leaders for education and racial justice early on. She is also an artist, writer, and holds a Master of Arts degree in Human Rights Education from the University of San Francisco. I welcome her to ask her question.
Hey, Brandy.
Hi, Alicia.
Hey.
So nice to be with you virtually.
Great to be with you too. Oh, I thank you. I gotta get them done again on Saturday, but we're doing a little something. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. So, like she said, Brandy from Coleman here in San Francisco. And my question is, what are your thoughts on building and maintaining local political power when Black and Brown people are being pushed out of cities like San Francisco?
Oh, Brandy. Oh, this is like this is like a tender spot for me. I when I first started working at Power in San Francisco many years ago, 2005, Coleman Advocates was one of our very first partners as we were organizing in Bayview Hunters Point. And it was painful then, and it's even more painful now. Let me just offer that I think it is really important that we are building a bench of leaders, because we're still there. We're definitely still there. It's just that, unfortunately, and these are my experiences and opinions, but unfortunately, we've been left out of the progressive movement that then wants to hold and take power, right? Like on the county board. But somehow, like, we always kind of get overlooked. And when I was organizing there, nobody thought we could or should organize in Bayview. Now everybody's talking about Bayview, but we had to like fight. And a lot of times the people that we were fighting, I mean, we knew that we weren't each other's enemy, but there just wasn't a depth of understanding around why it was important to deepen the bench, in particular in Black communities, because we were being hemorrhaged from that city and still are being hemorrhaged from that city. And what it meant for representation of our communities was that our representation was shallow. I'm just gonna keep it a buck. I don't even live there no more, so I can say anything I want. It was shallow. It was, and it was super weird. I read yesterday, that Bayview just got its first full service grocery store. You know how long we've been fighting for that in the richest city in the world? Why has it taken that long to get a full service grocery store in that community? Because it's a Black community. Just facts. So there's that on that. And then so often part of what we get with leadership is that people have this notion that the reason that our communities are poor is because poor people are in our communities, as opposed to that resources have been siphoned and sucked out of our communities and not returned. Right. And so, that's what happens when you give away a community to the largest bidder. And I'm not sorry to say that is exactly what has happened in San Francisco. I love my dear sister, who is the mayor of the city, and I ran campaigns against her about this very thing. I feel very strongly about this. And this was work that I did there for 10 years. And so I just want to say, find your crew, Brandy, and get started early, including with yourself, talking with each other about your leadership trajectory, being a rule maker in that city. You should sit on the board of supervisors, my friend. And there's some other people that should be sitting on the board of supervisors, and we should have a diversity of thought on the board of supervisors as it relates to Black people. And there are also some deep opportunities right now to help support Black leadership and also nurture Black leadership in the city, even though our numbers are dwindling. And I would also add to that there's no power in San Francisco without building really strong multiracial alliances. Black people are 4% of that city. So there's that on that. Okay, when I started, we were 8%. Okay, so this isn't to say like, oh, only Black people should get together. It's like not my ideology. What it is to say is we need depth in our relationships, and then we need a strategy, right, with communities that share common cause and common pain, right? About how it is that we are going to be the people who make the rules and change the rules, and not just from the outside. And Coleman has been a incredible visionary around this, right? Coleman really helped put some of the most progressive supervisors on that board. And I'd love to see a larger strategy around that again, because we lost the majority on the board. And I think we also lost our vision and our path for what it meant and what it could mean to exercise power in that city. So I hope I answered your question. You know, I get feelings about this thing in particular.
No, you definitely did. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brandy. And thank you for your response, Alicia. We have Shayla Bonner coming up to ask a question. Shayla hails from Richmond, California.
Hey.
She is currently the lead organizer at the Safe Return Project. She's an advocate for ending mass incarceration and ending racial disparities in the criminal legal system. Her goal is to build equity in the communities by overcoming obstacles and challenges and bringing healing to those who have traumatic or stressful experiences. Her motto is, don't let your past dictate your future.
I love that. Hi, Shayla.
Hi, I'm super excited and honored to be in this virtual space with you. I'm so happy. So again, my name is Shayla Bonner from the Safe Return Project, lead organizer there. And we collectively came together with this question for you, which is, what types of challenges and opportunities have you experienced as your public image has evolved over time?
Whew. Oh, excellent question. And thank you for asking it. My groan was not about your question. It was about all the things that we hold. Listen, I'm a very private person that likes to play the back. And it was when I was organizing in San Francisco, actually, that people were pushing me to the front, and I was deeply uncomfortable with it, but I'm also deeply grateful for it, because the opportunity that there is to use a platform to get your message, your values, your issues, your call to action out there, way beyond the people that we always talk to, is invaluable. So if you have a stage that you can take it over. And it will suck on a lot of levels, but remember what you're taking it over for. Yeah. I think the other, the weird thing that has happened in the last decade is that organizers and people who make social change with hundreds and thousands of other people have become celebrities. And it's a really weird, it's very weird. It's strange. And what's even odder, but understandable, is that then what ends up happening is that people want to become celebrities, so then they call themselves organizers. I hate that. I hate that so much. Yeah, so that's a lesson, which is to always remember what it is that you're doing this for and who you do it for and who you do it with. And I would also say, I have learned that you should not be afraid to take up space. And sometimes it's our own folks that don't want you to take up space. And so I just want to say that to you. And if you feel that, you know, it's understandable, right? People get worried that we are going to get corrupted, right? Or your head's going to blow up and you're going to think you're better than other people, lots of things. You should stay anchored and remember who you're accountable to. But the thing that I've had to also realize is that because each of us deeply internalize all these systems that tell us we need to be small, sometimes we do that with each other too. And so I do think there is a balance, right, between making sure you're anchored, grounded, and accountable, and making yourself small so other people can feel big. That's actually a false choice. We can all be big together. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to happen in the same way, right? But I always bring my folks everywhere I'm at. If you're not there physically with me, you're there in what I'm talking about, right? The last thing I would offer here is, in terms of things that I've learned, all this stuff is here 1 minute and gone the next. So don't get attached to it. Just keep it a buck. Like, I will tell you, over the last 10 years, I've been the most loved person and the most hated person. I've been on the cover of Time magazine, and then I'd be hated on by hella people for hella reasons that I don't even know. And I would just say, like, know yourself, right? What's important, right, is that you're authentic everywhere you be. So focus on that, because cameras, no cameras, people knowing you, not knowing you, all that stuff ebbs and flows, right? Today we talking about Kanye, 10 years from now, we're not going to be talking about Kanye. It's just a fact, right? I went to go try to find a Pearl Jam concert last night on the internet. I really wanted to go see Pearl Jam. I was like, oh, that'd be dope. Dude, they're not playing anywhere anymore. I'm like, how do people not know who Pearl Jam is? Now it's just Eddie Vedder, and he's only got one show, like in February, somewhere in the cut. Here 1 minute, gone the next. They used to be the most popular. Do you know what I mean? So just using that as an example to say, visibility and attention is temporary. So just be you everywhere that you are, for the purpose of what you were trying to do, no matter if somebody's watching you or not.
Thank you so much for that.
You're so welcome.
Thank you, Shayla. And thank you for that message of authenticity, Alicia. I really vibed with that. We have a final community member, BK Williams. BK is a coordinator of the Richmond Progressive Alliance. She has served as Richmond's Art and Culture Commissioner and as board chair for Queer Women of Color Media Arts, where social justice issues are routinely addressed. BK is a filmmaker and co-founded the Richmond Women's Film Collective to help diverse women tell their own stories through film. As an appointee to Richmond's Reimagining Public Safety Task Force and the Measure X Advisory Board, BK seeks opportunities to both contribute to and be changed by advocacy and support for the most vulnerable members of our society. Welcome, BK.
Thank you so much. And it's really good to be here. I'm thrilled to be here. And my name is BK Williams, and I am co-chair of a political organization in Richmond, that is the Richmond Progressive Alliance, the RPA as it's known. And we work to get people elected to political office. So when you were sharing with Brandy, or telling Brandy that she should be sitting on the board of San Francisco, of the supervisors, that resonates, because that's what we do. Mm-hmm. So my question for you is there a political or a particular infrastructure that you believe is needed in order to support progressive women of color in leadership positions, particularly in elected positions?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you asked this question. This is what I nerd out on all the time. And this is a lot of the work that we do at the Black Futures Lab and the Black to the Future Action Fund. In addition to writing this book, I also, in 2017, started imagining what it would take to build a robust, healthy movement where Black people were powerful within it and we were powerful in politics. And I assessed that there were some core strategies that we need to be moving and some core gaps that we needed to bridge. And one of those gaps is that we put people in positions of power that actually don't have any idea how to govern. It's like the thing that we whisper, right? But like, we don't actually, unless you have like a degree in this stuff, people don't know how to write policy. They don't know how to get policy passed, right? Like, we get in with our values, but then we get there, we don't have any skill. And so we're not effective, right? We're really dependent on other people to do things for us. And then that's a tricky landscape, right? Because you often inherit other people's infrastructure that may or may not be for you. So I think we need to deepen our ability to write, win, and implement policy in cities and states. We need to know how to actually govern. And we do that at the lab through our Black to the Future Public Policy Institute. We train grassroots folks how to write, win, and implement policy in cities and states. And we won a statewide bill in California that essentially changed sentencing guidelines for young women and girls who were convicted of crimes that basically stemmed from being in intimate partner violent relationships or domestic violence relationships, right? So that kind of thing, right? Which changes the lives for women all over the state. The other gap, I think, is media and communications training. We don't know how to talk to people and compel them to want to join us. And there are some interesting programs out there that can help support that, but somebody needs to bring all that stuff in-house. I hope you all test it. The other thing that I think is a big capacity gap is data. Like real, recent, and relevant data about who we are, what we experience every day, and what we want. I know at the Black Futures Lab, we do a Black census, which is the largest survey of Black people in America in 157 years. This year, we are going to be the largest survey of Black people in American history. And it is baffling to me that when we hear polling, right, about what Black people think, what Black people want, how Black folks do things, we're really at most saying that people talk to like 100 people, maybe 400 people, at most 1,000 people. We talk to over 30,000 Black people across the country from different backgrounds, perspectives, politics, right? And I feel like the reason that I'm talking about data is not just to big up my organization, it's to say that we're using a lot of anecdotes that aren't grounded. So we need to have a recent and relevant data that actually tells us a lot more about what our communities need and where we're missing from public policy. And then finally, I think the gaps, especially for elected officials, we have a lot of women of color and Black women who are the only or the first. And they're not networked. They're not networked. Unless they themselves take the time and the opportunity to like reach out, right, to other firsts and other onlys, we're not networked. And when we are networked, it's socially, but it's not politically. It's like, how dope would it be, right, if Black women elected officials across the state, right, moved a policy agenda together, right, and worked with each other across cities, right, across jurisdictions to figure out, can we replicate, right, these policy wins in different places? Can we get things in Richmond that we're getting in San Francisco, that we're getting in Sacramento, that we're getting in Los Angeles? Like, what do you think that could do for Black people? California is the 5th It's the state that has the 5th largest Black population in the country. We're not networked, you know what I mean? And nobody thinks about us that way. So anywho, those are some of the gaps that I think exist. And I'd love to talk with you about it more. If people are interested in the Policy Institute, we take applications each year. We just started our 3rd cohort. The next set of applications will be out again next summer. But we also resource people to participate so that it can be the focus of your work and not a thing you're trying to do while you're feeding your kid dinner. And, it doesn't become your side job. It's like we actually invest in organizations and people by resourcing organizations and people to build these skills in real time. That's the other thing. We take you through an actual legislative cycle with the bill that you write, and we help you figure out how to get it introduced, how to get sponsors for it, how to get it into committees and out of committees, and eventually, hopefully, to the mayor's desk or to the governor's desk for approval. And then we help you make sure that people actually do something about that policy you passed. So if folks are interested in that, you can hit me on the side.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, BK. And thank you to all our community partners who joined us today. This has really fed my soul. And honestly, the last remarks that you just delivered really helped to reiterate the need for us to have programs like the Women X of Color, Women X of Power program at the San Francisco Foundation. And it's just nice to know that we have a partner in you and the work that you're doing. So we will be coming back and asking questions. But now we are going to wrap up, and I'm going to turn it over to Yolanda Lindor. It is my pleasure to welcome her and to let you know that she is one of the founding members of the Women X of Color, Women X of Power program. In fact, her work at the foundation, along with 3 other women of color, led to this very program. And this moment of this event. And so I just wanted to make a nod to her leadership and vision and to turn it over to Yolanda to wrap us up. Thank you.
Thank you, both of you, Alicia and my colleague, Valerie. So yes, Yolanda Lindor work at the San Francisco Foundation, where our North Star is racial equity and economic inclusion. So 4 years ago, as Valerie was just mentioning, I, along with 3 of my colleagues, started to focus on the leadership of women of color. So women of color are grossly underrepresented in top leadership roles in both the nonprofit sector and in local government. For example, there are only 3 women X of color among the 31 county supervisors in the 5 Bay Area counties that we serve. This is nothing less than tragic. In leadership roles, women X of colors bring their lived experience to decision-making tables, and they have the capacity to change the quality of life for low-income communities of color. And I'm glad to report, in fact, Alicia has been talking to us this last hour, that there are solutions to these issues. For example, for women X of color who are seeking elected positions, here locally, there's a pilot program for a voucher system to equalize the fundraising that is necessary to be successful in a campaign. We can also move, as some areas have, from at large to district-based elections. And there are programs that specifically support women X of color to run for office. Here at the San Francisco Foundation, our vision is that Bay Area women of color leaders thrive in their fullness, that they build community power, and that they obtain positions of decision-making power and access to allocation of resources. To this end, we are building out our Women X of Color, Women X of Power program. We are partnering with the Leader Spring Center, so we're very glad that one of their alumni was here with us today, to scale their groundbreaking fellowship program. It's called Lead Strong, and it's focused, of course, on the leadership of women of color. And if you're interested in participating in the cohort, please go to this website and apply. We also host a Lunching with Leaders series of events several times a year. And this is an opportunity for to hear an outstanding women of color leader, and also to network with other women of color leaders. We invite you to join us. And coming up on November 29th, we will be talking with Pia Infante, a national leader in trust-based philanthropy. So as I mentioned, right now, our Women X of Color, Women X of Power program is preparing women for leadership positions in both the nonprofit and local government sectors. We are asking you for your involvement through participation in the program, through participation in our leadership events, and through your donations. And finally, the elections deadline here in California is coming up on November 8th, and it's almost upon us. Please vote. I want to thank, before we close, our Shiro, our sister, Alicia Garza, for her wisdom and her insights. To our community partners for their vision and determination and their unbelievable effectiveness in their work. And to you, our community, thank you so much for joining us. Have a good afternoon.
Gracias a la vida que me ha dado tanto, me dio dos luceros